Back in March when I was at Megacon, I looked up from the table I was sculpting at and saw the most amazing costume I think I've probably ever seen walk past. I tried to get a quick interview with the guys, but I managed to completely get all the technical side of things wrong. Nothing came out. So I lost all that. But fortunately, they have agreed to do a Zoom call, and I caught up with them the other day to have a chat about how they built this brilliant costume. Let's have a look.
So, hi guys, hi Stuart, hi Judy. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thanks for bringing up and reaching out. It's good.
It's a pleasure. I'm going to hand straight over to you and ask you to just give us a little history of the suit and what made you build her and how, really. Over to you, the expert.
It happened about 8 years ago. I have a niece who lives some way from where we live, and I visited her, and she was watching the Dreamworks movie called Rise of the Guardians, one of their animated movies, which I'd not heard of. But it certainly was I was quite taken by how spectacular the movie was, and the quality and the way they created the characters. It's got the main characters of childhood: Father Christmas, Easter Bunny, Sandman, the Tooth Fairy, and Jack Frost. And while we were watching it, my niece commented that the Tooth Fairy had recently taken one of her teeth and forgot to leave a coin. So the way they created the Tooth Fairy is completely different to what I was used to. You know, she was kind of iridescent blue, wings and crest feather and so on. And I had this dumb idea that it would be really cool if Tooth Fairy could come to my niece's next birthday, her 7th birthday, with the coin and possibly carrying the birthday cake. And that's kind of where it started, really.
Brilliant. So how long did it take you to make from sort of start to finish?
It took about 9 months. I think the birthday party was slightly delayed when I finished it. So we hired a gymnasium for the party and had a big backdrop of the Tooth Palace from the movie, and lots of my niece's friends, and then the fairy did indeed arrive carrying the birthday cake. But it was a real slog getting there because I've never made a costume before of any kind.
That's unbelievable that this, the first thing you make. And a lot of people, I remember the first thing I ever sculpted. I mean, it's dreadful if I look at it now. Some, even the third and fourth things, you look back and you think, oh, okay, I've learned a lot. But your first thing you're creating, and this comes out, I mean, wow. So did you have to learn?
I kind of figured I was 49 years old, and I was about to make a fairy, and if I messed it up, I'd never live it down. So either had to be spectacular, or nobody was ever going to see it. So I didn't sleep for the first few months because I wanted to create the movie character, and I looked at various cosplays of the character, and I thought, well, none of them looked like the movie character. And I started thinking, well, why? And I was measuring things up, being an engineer, predominantly electronics, but a bit of mechanical as well. I used to work at the scale, and I thought, there's kind of out of proportion here. Like the head's a bit big, and the eyes are twice as big as they should be. And I thought, well, I can't really have like Auntie Mabel in a feather hat. This isn't going to work. I'm going to have to actually make a head, and I didn't have a clue how to make a head or anything. And
that's really interesting. So your kind of your engineering background, your understanding of proportion, and I mean, if you go on like a likeness course, I was lucky enough to do one with a guy called Richard Martin, who's an absolute genius at doing celebrity. Look up his work, RMFX. He does silicon busts of celebrities, and they are just incredible. And it really is that what makes the likeness is proportion and distance, and where things are and how big they are in relation. It's interesting that your engineering background, you skipped that whole lesson because you kind of knew that already. So you sort of come out of
sort of looking at the character and comparing it with a real person, and the only reference dimension I could scale off was the width across the shoulders. Everything else was mucked about with.
Right.
So that was the reference, was the date and measurement, in which I then worked out the head was bigger than it should have been, and the eyes were too big and so on. I thought, I'm going to have to make a head. But I wanted her to not just be like a static mascot head with a fixed smile and just staring straight ahead inanely. She was going to be amongst a lot of children. I wanted the children to accept her for what she was, which meant that I had to make everything work.
And it does. This is what really is. I love the way you're so nervous about it now, and it's just brilliant. And this is the thing that caught me was I was trying to sculpt, and you kind of walk past. And I thought, wow, that's a really good sculpt. It's really, not just the sculpt, the finish was very lifelike, the skin tones. And then I was looking, and then the eyes moved, and I was like, did I see that? And then, so how did you do that? I mean, that is insanely cool.
I haven't found still to this day anybody else who's done that. But the first challenge was to get moving eyes in a space where there wasn't space because there was somebody inside, and then to get it to move realistically. And I thought, well, there's various ways I could mechanically move the eyes around, but it's like radio control. It's not going to be instinctive. It's not going to be reactive. It's going to look artificial.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, maybe I could actually track the performer's own eyes. So I designed an eye tracking system specifically for the costume. It's all designed from scratch from electronics because there was no space to fit any kind of traditional system in, and they tend to be, rely on a PC doing image processing, and it's all very, very complicated. And I need something very, very compact and small. So I designed an eye tracking system specifically for the costume that would fit in the space I had and work to move the eyes on the costume. So
wow. So inside the head,
there's just works effectively. It's kind of natural movements.
That's mad.
She's looking.
I mean that. Wow. So inside the head, there's a system that's actually looking at the performer's eyes. So what you're kind of almost doing is what they do in CGI with performance capture, except you've made something that does it like real time, right in front of you.
Right in front of me. Yeah.
Wow.
All the while,
and that's obviously because
it's sitting there doing its job. Yeah.
And that's because of your engineering background, I guess, that you came up with that idea.
That was invaluable for that and for solving the mechanics, because we've got a set of moving eyes and eyelids, but tooth eyes are set quite a long way back from the mouth in profile, so our eyes are back here from the chin. So there is no room at all to get mechanical eyes behind in there. So there's actually, and I made them as thin as I possibly could. And in fact, the performer's eyelashes pretty much touch the inside of tooth eyes. And the eyelids was another thing, because again, you haven't got room to get a solid eyelid to move in because there's somebody in there.
Yes.
And then there's a couple of optical illusions then going on, which completely affect really, such that when you see her in profile, the eyes are correctly back from the mouth, despite the fact that the performer's chin is in the chin of the mask.
Wow.
It's actually two optical illusions as well as the engineering to get it to work and to be convincing.
Wow. And how did you obviously you sculpted the head, I imagine, because it doesn't look 3D.
I had a bit of help from a local sculptor, because that's another thing I hadn't done. So I looked on one of the local arts websites and found a local sculptor. And we kind of worked together on it, because she didn't have a sculpt. And I sort of used the engineering, the proportions and the things that I wanted. We worked together on it too, because she's never sculpted anything that's either so big, because the head is bigger than normal, or is out of proportion. She's used to doing things correctly. So it was new for both of us, and we worked as a team on it to do the sculpture.
Brilliant. And what's the head actually casting? Because it looks, when you see it, it's very lifelike. It doesn't look like a rubber or plastic head. So how did you get that?
So it's silicone, smooth on EcoFlex 030.
Oh, okay. So most of the stuff I make is EcoFlex 020. So same stuff. Yeah. Hence the reason why it looks very lifelike.
And you mentioned earlier, Steve, about your first attempts you're never happy with and you kind of improve. And that's why we've got a second costume. The first one, I kept looking at it, I could have done better. It wasn't, the shape of the chin and the lips wasn't the way I really wanted it. It's kind of a bit, so that's one of the reasons I said, but the last one, it's probably the last costume I should make. Just throw everything I can at it and get it as right as I can and throw it out and say, there it is. That's me.
If I had £1 for everybody that I spoke to over the years that said this will be the last costume I'll ever make, I could give up work. So
I'll have to see, I guess. But at the moment, it's nothing on the radar. This one takes up much of my time.
And I assume you sort of, do you take her out to events and things? Yeah,
well, after we did the birthday party, I thought, what am I going to do with it? I spent all this money all to making it, and it's there. And so I needed another performer, because the lady who did it at the birthday party, that was the thing she wanted to do, which is fine. So I went to the local Vietnamese restaurant and came away with the waitress. She was into cosplay, so she became the first cosplay performer of two. And we went to a Comic-Con in London, and so the Old Earl's Court, first one, London Film and Comic-Con.
Okay, yeah, no, well.
Go that was.
Yeah, well, when Earl's Court was gone, isn't it? So yeah, it's Olympia now, I think.
There, and I was amazed. I loved it. He said, it's so and so from such and such, and I was kind of recognising some of the costumes that people have made. And so we decided we'd have a go at the masquerade there. And so we put Suze on the stage and she performed with one of our performers' friends, Jack Frost, and we came away with the first prize at our first event. So this is getting better by the moment here. This is quite good. So that's where it started. We've been doing Comic Cons UK, and we've done a couple in the US as well. We've done San Diego and New York. Absolutely stole the show. San Diego was fantastic. It was such a blast there. Because of course in America, they certainly haven't seen anything like it.
I haven't done an American event yet. It's on my list of things. I tell a lie. No, I did. I went to one as a punt. I went to Monsterpalooza a few years back, before I knew much about how big Monsterpalooza was. And oh wow, just what a day! What a day! But on my list of things to do are some of the bigger, like Dragon Cons and things in the future. So it sounds like a very good point to ask you, Judith. What's it like to actually wear on the inside? Do you feel claustrophobic? How much can you see? How much can you move?
Well, it feels quite cosy inside. How much can I see? It's a little bit restricted, but I can see rather well-ish. I can only see to a certain level down, so mine needs have to see what's directly underneath me, you know.
Like small children.
Like small, oh gosh, yeah. It's like children. Sometimes I miss them, bless them. But yeah, it's quite cosy, but it's all right. You know, you might think you get really hot inside, but you don't.
Yeah.
There's a fan there, there's an aircon there.
Two cooling fans in the top to bring fresh air in.
Yeah, keeping me fresh and he's thought of everything.
He's thought of everything, isn't he?
Well, I kind of had to because I can't afford to pay the performers, and if they don't enjoy it themselves, I haven't got a performer, and then that's the end of it. So then it was uncomfortable. I had to do whatever I could to try and fix it. And so there's been an evolution over the years to try and get the weight out of things and make things more comfortable. Yeah, so the performer actually enjoys the experience as well, which is absolutely vital to the whole thing.
And I take it you do enjoy it.
Oh gosh, yes. It's fantastic. It's I'm putting all those smiles on people's faces.
Is that your favourite part about wearing it? Is it the reactions you get from the kids, I guess?
Gosh, yes. And they talk about you. Even when they go home, we heard back, later on that they would keep talking about too, that they met the fairy, the real Beatles fairy. It's fantastic.
Brilliant.
It's fabulous.
I think it's the combination of the costume is so realistic. You obviously perform very well in it as well. You really are the part. And to kids, they don't see. I don't think kids see a costume or a suit or a head. They just see the character, don't they? And they
see magic.
It does seem to work well. Yeah.
They see magic. They do.
I know that some mascots can be quite scary for children.
Yeah, I mean, some of my costumes certainly,
Some of yours are designed to be scary. That's okay.
Well, some of those are but I don't. Yeah, like Batman. Sometimes I costume as Batman now and then, and some kids find that very frightening or just run away. Certainly, a lot of the Star Wars stuff is. Wow. The reactions of the kids is the reason why I do the costume. I imagine it would go. I don't know if you've ever thought about doing this or if it's something you're thinking of doing. We sometimes do hospital visits to like Great Ormond Street and stuff like that. And it's not easy. I'll be honest with you, it's difficult. It's emotionally draining, but it's rewarding because in that moment when you're interacting with the kids, they've forgotten where they are. They've forgotten they're in hospital. They've forgotten they're poorly, and they're just, wow, I'm talking to Batman or Iron Man, whoever. So, if you, I'm happy to drop you some contacts that might get you into that if you guys
would like to do. We did inquire at our local hospital here in Bournemouth, but they kind of said, "Oh, it's a bit too difficult. Can't really get you."
Probably is at the minute. Yeah, a lot of them. I think a lot of money just starts.
As far as hospital bedside radio, and that was it. Doesn't work on radio, though.
That's absolutely brilliant. Well, I really hope it isn't the last costume you ever do because, it's one of a kind. I've never seen anything like it before. And I think some of the things you've mentioned, the eye tracking is just, I hesitate to even call it costuming or cosplay, really, because it's kind of, I must say better, because it sounds like I'm belittling cosplayers and costumers. I'm really not, but it's like almost like it's just walked off of a film set into the room. It's the technology and the design and the performance is just really all there. Never mind the kids being fooled and mesmerised by it. I was, and so was everybody else behind me at the stand, I think. So I hope it's not. I hope this isn't the last conversation we have, and then
I hope
the conversation is whatever you build next. I've got a few ideas I can ping you away when we've finished.
Yeah. Well, it's handy. I know where there's a good sculptor.
Ask him, he'll do it.
Yeah, it's fine. He's got the eye for detail.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant, guys. I'd like to say thank you very, very much for taking the time to join us this evening. That was fascinating, and again, just well done to you both. Absolutely, that's the costume of at least the year for me. Loved it.
Really awesome. Thank you ever so much for talking to us. Really
Thank you for having us.
We've enjoyed it as well, haven't we? Yeah.
It's an absolute pleasure. There you go. I'm going to let these guys enjoy the rest of their evening. That was Judith and Stuart there who made that incredible costume. Brilliant, isn't it?